By 2003, Adam Aircraft had more than 100 orders for a twin-engine airplane that was supposed to make piston twins safe again. The A500 attacked the problem that made light twins scary: asymmetric thrust. So when you lose one engine on a conventional twin, you don't just lose half your power. The live engine will keep trying to yaw and roll the airplane toward the dead engine. The farther those engines are from the center line, the worse that yaw moment gets, and the more work the pilot has to do to keep the thing pointed where it should be. The A500's answer to that problem was centerline thrust. One engine in the nose, one in the tail, all the thrust down the middle. It was arguably one of the most advanced piston twins ever built. Adam Aircraft hoped to sell a lot of them, but when the airplane made it through certification, the company that made it went under, and by 2008, Adam Aircraft was bankrupt. Only 7 A500s had been delivered. The Adam A500 was the brainchild of Rick Adam. He'd grown up on Air Force bases. His father flew B-17s and B-29s in the war, and all he'd ever wanted was to follow him into the cockpit. But Adam was colorblind, and the Air Force doesn't let colorblind pilots fly. So instead of fighters, he ended up running the computer center at Cape Kennedy during Apollo, and from there drifted into tech, where he built a software company that reached a $3.5 billion valuation. Adam never stopped wanting to fly. He finally got his license in his 40s, and the more he flew piston twins, the more that asymmetric thrust problem kept nagging him. Get the speed wrong by even a few knots, and the airplane rolls over and kills you. The Skymaster's push-pull layout fixed that completely, but it fixed it in an airplane that was slow, ugly, and 40 years out of date. So Adam thought, what if you kept the centerline thrust idea, but wrap it around something people actually wanted to fly? In September 1999, he walked into Scaled Composites and asked Burt Rutan to draw it, and Rutan delivered in about 7 months: a carbon composite airframe with a pressurized cabin, twin booms, and the kind of silhouette that made everyone on the ramp stop and stare. It did around 230 knots at 20,000 feet, roughly 1,500 nautical miles of range with IFR reserves, and about 2,020 pounds of useful load at a 5,400-pound gross weight. On paper and in the air, it was exactly what Adam had asked for. Rutan had proved the concept. Now Adam Aircraft had to turn it into something the FAA would certify and a factory could build. And that meant changing almost everything about the airplane while keeping the centerline thrust idea that made it special. So the centerline thrust layout stayed. So did the two 350-horsepower Continental TSIO 550s, driving 3-blade Hartzell scimitar props. But almost everything around them changed. The proof of concept cabin was too cramped for the market Adam was chasing, so they stretched the fuselage 18 inches, added an air stair door, and gave it club seating. The prototype also used flaperons, one control surface trying to act as both aileron and flap. That was clever, and for a proof of concept, clever was enough. The airplane only had to show that the basic idea worked. But a certified airplane has to do more than impress people on a ramp. It has to behave the same way every time, at low speed, in the flare, during stalls, and in the hands of ordinary pilots. So Adam had to separate the jobs. Roll control went back to proper ailerons. Lift and landing speed went to proper Fowler flaps. The wing was lowered, the structure was reworked around a single-piece spar, and the airplane moved from Rutan-style experiment to something the FAA could actually approve. By 2003, Adam was telling buyers the A500 would be certified that autumn, with deliveries before the end of the year. That did not happen. When the FAA finally granted the type certificate in May 2005, it came with a giant warning label: day VFR only, below 12,500 feet. Night flying IFR and approved pressurization were off the table for an aircraft sold as a pressurized cabin-class traveling machine. That was brutal. Now, the FAA was not arbitrarily hobbling it. The A500 was an all-new Part 23 aircraft from a first-time manufacturer with a composite structure, pressurized cabin, unusual centerline thrust layout, and systems that had to be proven one by one. Adam could not lean on decades of certification history the way Cessna, Piper, or Beechcraft could. It had to earn every approval from scratch. So, certification came in stages. First the basic airframe, then the operating envelope, then night flying, then IFR, and finally pressurization. Full day and night VFR-IFR approval did not arrive until October 2006, almost 3 years after Adam had promised deliveries. And while that process dragged on, the company was spending like a real aircraft manufacturer before it could sell like one. And instead of putting every available dollar and engineer into fixing that problem, Adam Aircraft had already turned towards something even more dangerous: the jet. So before the A500 was properly finished, Adam was already developing the A700, a very light jet that shared roughly 65% of the A500's airframe structure. On paper, his logic was to certify the A500, then use the shared airframe to accelerate A700 certification and build a family of aircraft from one production platform. So, the piston twin funds the jet, and the jet scales the company. This means that in reality, the A500 never really received the time, attention, money, and manpower it needed to become the airplane it should have been. It became a certification pathfinder and production testbed for the more glamorous program. And the damage was not just organizational. The A700 did not just steal time and money from the A500, it made the airplane heavier. Because in 2003, Adam was marketing the A500 at roughly 4,200 pounds empty, 6,300 pounds gross, 2,100 pounds useful load, and about 720 pounds of payload with full fuel. The price was just under $900,000. But by 2007, serial number 7, the first fully equipped production airplane, weighed in at 5,460 pounds empty, more than 1,200 pounds heavier than the number Adam had been quoting 4 years earlier. The certified ramp weight had climbed to 7,050 pounds, and the price had risen to $1.2 million. Do the arithmetic. With full fuel, 230 gallons, the remaining payload was roughly 160 pounds. That is a pressurized 6-seat twin that cannot carry a pilot if the tanks are full. How does an airplane gain 1,200 pounds between the brochure and the production line? Adam was building 2 airplanes in one. The A500 was substantially overbuilt to simplify certification of the A700. Weight was being accepted on the piston twin to make the jet's path easier. And on top of that came everything a production airplane carries that a proof of concept never did: cabin insulation, environmental systems, full avionics, ice protection, production wiring, production structure, and all the regulatory margins the FAA demanded. Every individual addition sounded reasonable. The sum destroyed the payload. On top of that, the airplane carried about 30 gallons of unusable fuel, sitting in the tanks but inaccessible to the engines. Adam believed further testing could reclaim some of it, but until then, those 30 gallons were dead weight subtracting directly from an already crippled useful load. A deep weight reduction redesign could have addressed the problem, but that would have meant months of re-engineering, retesting, and recertifying, and Adam was already burning through cash with almost nothing coming back in. Even if the airplane had been lighter, even if the certification had been faster, even if the A700 had never existed, Adam Aircraft still had to build A500s at a rate that could sustain a business. It never came close. Deliveries started in late 2005. Through 2006, Adam was shipping about 1 airplane per quarter, while publicly talking about ramping to 6 per month. By mid-2007, deliveries had stalled completely. 0 airplanes shipped in the first 2 quarters of that year. The company had halted A500 production to overhaul its manufacturing process, which tells you they knew the build system was not ready for scale. By 2007, the A500 was no longer competing against the dream Adam had sold in 2003. It was competing against actual airplanes buyers could already buy. If you wanted a fast piston twin, there was the Beechcraft Baron. Conventional, unforgiving if mishandled, but proven, supported, and understood. If you wanted a pressurized traveling airplane, there was the Piper Malibu Mirage family. If you wanted more cabin, more payload, or more serious business utility, the used market was full of cabin-class twins and entry-level turboprops that could carry real loads and had real support networks behind them. That made the A500's problem sharper. It had centerline thrust, it looked futuristic, and on paper it solved one of the oldest dangers in light twins. But buyers do not just buy ideas. They buy dispatch reliability, payload, support, resale value, delivery confidence, and a company they believe will still be alive in years. By late 2007, Adam Aircraft could not give them enough of that. The airplane was overweight. The useful load had collapsed. Certification had taken years longer than promised. The A700 jet was consuming resources the piston twin needed, and production still could not deliver aircraft fast enough to generate the cash required to fix the mess. Adam had burned through more than $100 million and delivered only 7 airplanes. In January 2008, Adam laid off roughly 300 of its 800 employees and suspended work at its Ogden facility. Management said it needed between $75 and $150 million in long-term financing to keep both the A500 and A700 programs alive. Even then, Adam was still publicly saying the interruption was temporary. It wasn't. By February 11, 2008, Adam Aircraft suspended all operations. The board met that day and accepted the resignation of CEO John Wolfe, who days earlier had reportedly warned shareholders the company needed an immediate $25 million or face liquidation. On February 15, 2008, Adam Aircraft filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Assets were listed at less than roughly $10 million against liabilities of $50 to $100 million. The whole thing, factory, tooling, type certificates, intellectual property, was sold for about $10 million. The buyer said the A700 jet was the priority. The A500 would not return to production. But in 2011, Triton Aerospace announced plans to revive the A500. They openly acknowledged the airplane was grossly overweight and said they intended to strip 800 to 1,000 pounds out of it. That revival never reached series production. So, that's it for today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It goes a long way for us.